Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Marketing Monday, Wins and Fails, where we go over all of the wins and the fails in the last week in marketing and business. This is a picture of our beautiful Earth and all of its interesting and unique countries. You may notice something if you're a longtime Marketing Monday viewer. We only cover things from here sometimes. And you know what? I'm damn proud of it. This is where all the business action's happening. However, we've had a week off from Marketing Monday. I spent a lot of time studying, a lot of time learning, a lot of time reading, and I'll be honest with you, this week there is absolutely no news going on in the United States of America. So, for this week and this week only, we are getting rid of United States news and we are going global. Let's start with a country that really is interested in American elections, but is entirely different, with a segment I like to call Privet Moscow. What's going on in Russia? There is a thing in economics called the guns versus butter model. Basically, it is a way of explaining trade-offs that governments have to make when they spend their government budget. The idea is, if you spend your money on more guns, you get less butter. And butter is a metaphor for things like Social Security, schooling, or, lower cost of goods. The idea is you have to make some kind of trade-off between how much you spend on defense, war, and good production. Leaders throughout history have talked about the guns versus butter model. There's great quotes from many leaders throughout history talking about how they're focusing on more guns or more butter. Until an even greater leader came along, Vladimir Putin, who said, nah, we can do both. Putin said there is no trade-off. We can solve defensive problems without destroying the economy. We can easily have both guns and butter. Well, it turns out in Putin's case, it was literal, because he is literally going through a butter Armageddon right now in Russia. It turns out all of the spending on guns is literally leading to actual butter prices rising 20% year over year. And now there is so much butter theft in Russian grocery stores, they have to lock it up like it's a fucking Nintendo DS. However, Russia has a plan to fix this budget deficit problem. Where could they go to get a whole bunch of money? American tech companies have a lot of money. How about Google? Russia recently had Google block some major state media channels on YouTube. And the Russian government said, you better unblock them. And then Google said no. So Russian government said, we're gonna fine you $1,000 a week. And every week you don't unblock them, we're going to double it. Well, I don't know if you guys know, the Ukraine war has been going on a long time now. It's been quite a few weeks. And so now it has hit a number of 2 undecillion rubles, which is $22 decillion. That is 22 and I think 31 zeros. Which is how much Google currently owes Russia for not unblocking the websites. If they were to pay up, it would cover the value of every asset on Earth times like 1,000. So Google better start digging between the couch cushions. Really smart play here by Putin. Speaking of smart plays, as you guys know, there is a long-running war in Ukraine. And right now, the only combatants in the war have been between Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, NATO has been supporting the Ukraine side. Other countries have been supportive of the Russian side by helping them buy their oil, like China. However, as of this week, a certain country has decided to send troops to join the Russian forces in combat. Annyeong Pyongyang, in this segment of North Korean news, Kim Jong-un and Putin seen here friends to the end. We now have a multi-state war here where North Korean troops, 10,000 of them, have shipped off to Russia to help fight in the Ukraine war, thus bringing East Asia into a ever-escalating global conflict. This was all theoretical until I believe yesterday when they actually entered open combat. Ukraine and North Korean troops have now officially begun firefighting as of yesterday. This is causing problems all over as it threatens to escalate what was a 2-country war into a 3-country war. North Korea brings in its alliance with other, again, I'm not saying World War III, but I am saying this is how these kind of things start, And South Korea, is already pledging more support towards Ukraine in response to North Korea pledging more support to Russia. Especially at the exact same time, North Korea is doing missile tests near South Korea. Kim Jong-un is not doing this for no reason. He senses he can help Putin here and receive concessions of his own, including increased missile technology and nuclear technology that come from Russia. So again, it's a tit for tat situation that increases the tension, not only in Europe, but now in East Asia. News from North Korea? Oh, dude, I saw this. Apparently, the North Korean troops have never had unfettered internet access before. So the first thing they did once they got to Russia is gorge on pornography. Just gone fucking insane. He sent 10,000 gooners. One country is happy about all of this war stuff happening elsewhere, and that's Germany, because it's not on them. If we get World War III, it's not their fault. So let's do a little update with Brandon on Brandenburg. A couple of interesting stories coming out of Germany. One was they did one of the largest tests that has ever been done on the 4-day work week. And the results were surprising. A number of firms that worked on the 4-day work week reported that, in fact, revenue went up. It's been economically profitable for us. They had a dramatic increase in productivity. It was a shocking result. They could not have come at a worse time and in a worse country, because Germany is in no position to be cutting hours. Germany is in an open recession right now, ever since they were cut off from Russian natural gas. And at the same time, Germany, which is reliant on its gigantic car industry, is facing stiff competition from China. Volkswagen just closed plants for the first time in its entire history. This is like 100 years. Volkswagen plants survived World War II. They are not surviving the fact that the EVs they're making are not selling, and that they are losing the ability to sell in China. They are not surviving Chinese competition. Invade France? Now we're getting to the World War III again. Again, history tends to be bad when Germany's in a recession. On the other side of the world, back closer to home, we have America's hat, Canada. What's going on in Canada? America's hat. Here's the thing about Canada. They are going through a lot of the things that I think America is going through, but they are slightly ahead of pace. So they raised interest rates same as us. They are cutting them earlier and faster than we are to try and prop back up their declining jobs numbers and real estate economy. So Canadians can breathe a sigh of relief, their Bank of Canada says, as they cut interest rates by 50 basis points. The thing is, they've already done this 3 times. He said this when they did the first cut, the second cut, and now the third cut. We in America are on our first cut, and we think it's gonna save the real estate market. Again, like I say, with the gaslighting, inflation is down, but somehow Canadians are still pessimistic? Why? Why are they so mad about their great economy? And it's because, again, possibly has to do with the fact that affordable rent is still out of reach. And perhaps if you want to buy a house, you can get this Vancouver home for a cool $2.5 million. Perhaps that is why Canadians are not breathing a sigh of relief just because you keep cutting interest rates. Again, I've talked about this before, but the rise in users of Reddit subreddits like Canada Jobs, Toronto Jobs are all skyrocketing. People try to find better jobs, especially white collar jobs in Canada. The problems Canada has seem to be a precursor of what we're facing in America, especially the rise in mortgage delinquencies. Again, if you buy this house in 2021, you may realize by 2024, you can't afford it. However, like many other great countries before them, Canada has a solution. There is a break glass in case of emergency button that will work and has proven to work. Taylor Swift. Taylor fucking Swift! It's been 2 years since I started talking about this. Countries are still doing it. Toronto is literally talking about how they're gonna generate their only positive economic growth from a massive Taylor Swift concert. 6 days in Toronto is gonna get 240,000 people to come into the city and start spending money they wouldn't have normally spent. It is their last chance. Hopefully she can save the country. This is from a Canadian news article that showed Taylor Swift as Godzilla sprinkling Canadian money on Toronto. And said, Swift is an economic engine unto herself. We are getting into truly desperate times. Now, politically, Canada is also in an interesting and contentious spot. Again, the 2 major issues for Canadian voters are the economy and immigration. Now, immigration is a difficult topic to discuss without people getting incredibly heated. So I will say this, until recently, Canada was one of the most tolerant countries for immigration in the world. Least amount of people who were upset about it, they liked it, it was incredible. So there is something different happening. And I have to say, the math does bear out the fact that there has been a dramatic rise, an unsustainable rise in immigration in Canada since 2021. So there's clearly something going on that has to be addressed at least in a more reliable way. And Trudeau has realized this a little bit too late, I think, because Trudeau just announced sharp cuts to Canada's immigration targets, realizing politically it's kind of killing him. As far as I can tell, again, I have no comment on Canadian politics. All I know is that it seems to me, from my understanding, he's doomed. Bro is doomed. Again, you can see here, 5% of Canadians cared about immigration in 2022. Now 21% do. It's been a quadrupling. And I think, again, if you drill down into it, my core theory of everything is that a lot of this comes down to housing. Canadians are so pissed about housing, and they think, and rightly so, there is a connection, a million new people coming into the country does raise housing prices, especially when it happens so quickly. And that is what's happening in Canada. And you're seeing, I mean, I just saw this is insane. There is a rise in fuck Trudeau Canada flags. I thought Canada was too polite for this. However, I think there may be a solution here. Some Canadians are a little bit more entrepreneurial. Rather than getting mad at their government or getting mad about immigration, some Canadians are taking their financial situation in their own hands. This guy's name is Ryan Wedding, and he's a born and bred Canadian athlete who got a medal in the Salt Lake Olympics, a snowboarder. He has figured out how to make a little bit of scratch on the side, and that is to get a bunch of cocaine in Southern California and smuggle it up to Canada. This former Olympian, Ryan Wedding, by the way, hairline is real slope as well, has been running a Canadian drug lord operation, which involved him ordering like 30 murders within Canada and smuggling multiple millions of pounds of cocaine. The federal investigation, which they named after where the event that he got his medal in, caught 1,800 kilograms of cocaine, guns, $250K in cash, and $3.2 million in crypto. Finally been caught and brought to justice. However, you can't talk about Canada without realizing that there's an inverted Canada in this world. There is a country that took Canada and flipped it upside down and made it warmer. And that is, of course, Australia, in a segment we call G'day Canberra, which is the capital of Australia if you didn't know. And it may shock you to find out when you research problems and economic issues in Australia, you find out that it's literally exactly like Canada. But one thing I noticed is that they have this very cool looking, beautiful currency. Now, obviously, as an American, any currency that's so brightly colored, I recognize as like Monopoly bucks, not real. And I can prove that by telling you that if you were to somehow get 2 million of these things, you couldn't buy this. How can this be real money? You have 2 million of them and you can't buy this? No, I don't think so. That's obviously fake. However, they do have a real currency in Australia, and it's called Bluey Bucks, because there is one real economic engine in Australia, and that's Bluey. Bluey's an incredible export for the country, extremely powerful. And recently, the Australian government officially released actual Bluey dollar bucks into the economy. These are real things, and ideally, they're supposed to be worth at least $1 Australian. However, $1 Australian is worthless, so people realize the Bluey bucks are worth way more. In fact, the Bluey dollar bucks are worth as much as 10 times the face value, because everyone wants the actual Bluey bucks. This has led to a weird arbitrage opportunity where people that can get their hands on these have got enormous value in their hands, which has led to a rise in theft. So there were employees of the warehouses where these were kept who stole 40,000 Bluey coins and were finally brought to justice. Got bandits. The Australian economy is saved. They have gotten their 40,000 Bluey bucks back. I'm sure they'll be able to afford things like, for example, a military. You see, if you want to make money in Australia, one way to do it now is to join the Australian military, which is now so desperate for people to join, it is offering $40,000 to $50,000 cash bonuses, or basically 5 Bluey bucks, to get people to join, as Australia senses a need for a greater military in an increasingly polarized world. You see, Australia is part of an organization called AUKUS, which is Great Britain, America, and Australia, that is largely designed to, I don't know how to say it politely, but like to use Australia as a gigantic floating aircraft carrier and base to contain China. And as tensions around Taiwan and in North Korea heat up, Australia's importance to AUKUS is greater than ever. And so Australia is spending budget it doesn't really have to grow its military. But if you're an Australian citizen, great time to get that 40K bonus. At the same time, Australia is also spending $361 billion to buy British and American nuclear submarines. If Australia starts World War III, we're fucked. Outside of Australia and Canada and the UK and the US, we need to go to some continents we don't talk about nearly as much. Let's get over to Africa, specifically a section I'm calling Can Ya Believe It? What's going on in the heart of Africa. This is a flag protest going on in Kenya. What you might not know about Kenya, and this applies to many of the countries in Africa, is that they're very young. The median age in Kenya is 20 years old. Now that might not sound so crazy. Maybe you think that's normal. It's not. In Germany, the median age is 44. In Canada, it's 42. In China, it's like 50. In Japan, it's probably like 78. Japan's really old. I'm not sure. And so Kenya has a large youth population that is chafing against demands of its elderly leaders. And in Kenya, there has been a rise in taxes that are a heavy burden on a, frankly, pretty poor young. The younger people of Kenya are getting taxed ever more to pay for government expenditures that is ran by older people. And so the unique thing happening in Kenya is that in Kenya, you are not allowed to display the flag unless you are part of the government. And so now the flag has become a symbol of like resistance against the government itself. And there's mass protests over these rising taxes. Again, we've talked about this. This wasn't Kenya, but a similar thing, I believe, in Nigeria, where the government is spending on a fleet of like 10 private planes for the president in a country that has a budget that's like 1/10,000,000th of America's, has 10x the planes for its president. They're just spending too much on the government is clearly extracting wealth from its citizenry for personal gain for the leadership. It's corruption. Now, there was good, I didn't want to only talk about negative stuff coming out of Africa. There was an interesting study I found while researching Kenya. This is a family of elephants in Kenya. And as Kenya has been growing, farmers have been pushing into the land that elephants normally roam around to. And it's causing real problems. This family of elephants can find themselves inadvertently stomping over crops, causing big human-elephant conflict. And the normal way to stop this was for Kenyan farmers to put up really expensive electric fences that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, obviously in Kenya, you can't really afford to have $100,000 electrified fences. Not only do these harm the animals, but they don't work. Often the elephant would break through anyway and then stomp the crops. So over recent years, different ideas have been discussed. And recently a study came out just a week ago that proved that one idea has been taking off among all else. This is a beehive. And it turns out if you put a chain of beehives around your farm, not only can you get money from harvesting the honey, but the elephants just naturally avoid the scent and smell of the bees. So there's been a massive rise in these successful beehive farms that have reduced elephant-human conflict. Number two, led to more revenue for the farmers who couldn't afford the fences. It's been remarkably successful. So that was a pretty cool piece of news. I thought that was pretty interesting. Outside of Africa, we can go to South America. Now, South America has an absolute incredible number of stories to cover. So I thought I would just give a brief update on a guy we've discussed many, many times, Javier Milei in Argentina. And the main news about him is that he has still continued after over a year in office to not have one photo where he doesn't look crazy. He is the president of Argentina, who surprisingly was swept to power on a promise of taking a literal chainsaw to the government budget, trying to balance the budget, stop money printing, and return the country to prosperity. I read a very fascinating article called "Can Milei Defuse Argentina's Economic Time Bomb?" By the way, this picture does not break the rule. Milei has done a pretty good job of getting the budget balanced in Argentina. They have their first surplus in like decades, and inflation has come down. However, because he has cut the government spending so much and so fast, poverty has risen dramatically. Any other leader would have been thrown out by now just because of the shock effect, but he is so animated. His like antics have gotten people to be on his side even as the austerity measures would normally get him thrown out. So he is currently sitting at like a 40% approval rating, enough to keep going. And it remains to be seen. If he can hold on to this, it's possible there can be a turnaround. Again, Argentina is going through shock therapy right now. But if not, as people get madder and madder and don't want to wait any longer, he could easily lose any right to power and get thrown out. It's a real balancing act. I am watching it fascinatingly because no other country has tried this on such a scale. So we're going to watch more, but I want to give you a quick update. Now, in the Middle East, I want to do a As-salamu alaykum Riyadh over in Saudi Arabia. One interesting thing that's going on, you guys know about the line, right? They're going to spend an untold number of billions of dollars to make a gigantic long mega city and crush millions of workers dying to create it. I think 20,000 workers have died creating it, working insane hours. Disaster. And so far, not really much has been built. It's been engineering and technical nightmare. People have been dying building it, and it's cost absurd amount of money. It's just an absurd amount of oil money being thrown at this project. So what is Riyadh gonna do to get back on track? How about build another gigantic, stupid building at the same time? As construction begins on Mukab, a giant cube, the world's largest building in human history. Again, I hate to be a Debbie Downer here, but there's a very real chance none of this stuff finishes. It's all absurdly astronomically expensive and has like insanely horrendous conditions to try and even get it started. We'll see how it all adds up. Anyway, we can't be doing a World News Marketing Monday without the main event. So ladies and gentlemen, let's do our favorite global segment.
Wazzup Beijing.
Wazzup Beijing! Let's take ourselves over to China, the Far East. Again, if there is one country that is impacting and shifting global events right now, it is China. How China interacts with its allies, its enemies, and the rest of the world is going to shape the next 10 years. It is the most important story in what's going on in the world. And a lot of things we're talking about previously all connect back into China. But first, I want to show you a random American white guy. This guy is shockingly important to what's going on in China. His name is Jim Farley, and he is the CEO of Ford. Recently, without thinking anyone was really listening, he went on a very small car podcast and said some words that actually had enormous impact.
It's like everyone's talking about the Apple car, but the Xiaomi car.
Which now exists and is on the road.
Which now exists.
Tens of thousands.
And it's fantastic. They sell 10,000, 20,000 a month. They're sold out for 6 months. That is an industry juggernaut and a consumer brand that is much stronger than car companies. I don't like talking about the competition so much, but I drive the Xiaomi. We flew one from Shanghai to Chicago, and I've been driving it for 6 months now, and I don't want to give it up.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
You see how shocked he is? Jim Farley, the CEO of an American car company, has said, hey, I flew in a Xiaomi SU7. I've been driving it. It's fucking great. Now, he didn't think it was that big of a deal, but that sent huge impacts throughout the world. This guy was shocked to hear it. I can't overstate enough how batteries and electric vehicles have become such a sticking point between China and the rest of the world. It has been such a push and pull, power struggle. China's rise in capabilities in making EVs has caused so much tension with other car manufacturing countries. We're seeing rises in tariffs, not only in America, but in Europe. Just a few days ago, levied massive tariffs against Chinese EVs. Canada just put out 100% tariff on Chinese EVs. Countries that are within, you could say maybe the American side versus the Chinese side, are putting big tariffs on Chinese EVs to try and slow them down. And China is finally responding. Immediately, China has now started to say, hey, pause all investment in any countries that voted for the EV tariffs. They are trying to punish the countries that have done that. For example, they've picked pork and alcohol. Two things that are big in like Spain, France, Italy. All these exports that go to China from these countries, they're now putting tariffs on them. There is now a trade war becoming openly hostile around Chinese EVs. And again, if you look at these French companies that sell alcohol, they're begging for the tariffs to stop. They're begging because so much of their alcohol is sold in China. But the main thing, the main reason Chinese EVs can be sold at a lower cost is because they have an excellent battery supply chain. Most of the great electric batteries of the world are made in China. Now, in EVs, that's one thing. At the end of the day, you can throw a tariff on it. You don't have a Chinese EV, it's fine. But batteries have another use, and that is in these things. Because as Ukraine has proven, the future of war relies on drones. Drones have become the future of war. The batteries for these drones are made in China, almost exclusively. Ukraine, for example, is fighting Russia, a China ally, by buying drones from China. They're buying batteries from China that go into American drones that are sold to Ukraine that are then used to fight. And China has realized this and is now flexing its power over batteries because China has now sanctioned the US drone maker that is buying Chinese batteries. And now Ukraine can't get the drones they need to keep up the fight. This is where we're now getting into the real implications of all the battery power being in China become a problem. But then the US drone maker said they're going to start selling drones to Taiwan, and that is when China blocked them them all together. So now Skydio, which is one of the largest drone producers in America, cannot get batteries. Now there's like an entire, government push to try and find a way to get battery production back in America so that we can make the drones so that we can have the war. What I'm saying is all of this stuff across all of these countries is connected. Things that happen in one country affect another, and they lead for tit for tat retaliations. And we are starting to see that start to spiral. Now, someone in chat said, just Timo it, which is the perfect fucking thing for you to say. Amazon and Temu, because we are seeing some interesting trade evolution there as well. You guys know there is a holy war between Amazon and Temu for American consumers. And there's been a unique pattern that has emerged where people have realized that the same products are being sold on both websites because they're all made in the same Chinese factory. So you might find, like, for example, this jewelry box for $2 on Temu. You might find it for $6 on Amazon, and you might find it for $20 on Instagram Reels. And it's all the same thing. But I've got a certain hot tip for Marketing Monday viewers, which is that if you were to want to buy something like this, you may have to have a toss-up, because if you buy from Amazon, it's more reliably delivered to you and faster, and they have better return policies. But Temu is cheaper. What people are doing is they simply buy the same item twice. They buy it for $9 on Amazon and $16 on Temu. Then they get this one first and enjoy it. Then this one arrives and they return it to Amazon, getting $90 back, which means they are getting the delivery and speed of Amazon, but with the product price of Temu. Now, you have about, I don't know, a week from when this is uploaded before they patch this out, I'm sure. But for now, it's the most insane tech, dude. Finally, I want to talk about this guy, the man of the hour, Xi Jinping. What he says and does, probably more than any other person, is going to influence how the next 10 years of geopolitics will go. He is incredibly influential as the undisputed de facto lifetime leader of the world's second largest economy. And what I want to tell you is, we've talked about this, China is going through a slow-moving real estate crisis that continues to weigh on especially millennials and Gen Z. I won't say, I think people overstate this as like China's doomed in 30 days or whatever. That's not what's happening, but it is kind of like 2007, 2008 in America, where it's a serious economic hit, especially hitting younger people. Now, what's unique about China is that this guy has all the power. In every other country we mentioned, they're having problems with young people and housing and inflation and the economy, and what they're doing is they're voting out the incumbent. In China, there's no one else to blame. It's a two-sided coin. He has all the power, but nobody else to blame. So it's leading to a unique problem, and it's affecting Xi Jinping's personality cult. We are seeing noticeable rises in protests and unrest because there is nowhere else for them to direct their anger. This is not going to lead to the removal of Xi Jinping or anything, but what I'm saying is there's unrest. And the last time we had this level of unrest was during the COVID lockdowns in China. And we are seeing a rise of similar type situations as the housing bubble unwinds, especially among young people, millennials and Gen Z in major cities who bought prepaid apartments that aren't built. So two things are happening. One is that America is having the CIA boost China recruiting. But the second effect is that to maintain order, if you're the only party, you have to do additional levels of crackdown because you can't just blame it on the other party. And so we're seeing things like when people do costumes, making fun of the Chinese COVID lockdowns, they get arrested. We are seeing crackdowns on costumes that are like anti-government, especially a rise in crackdowns on, imagine this. Imagine if the American government started cracking down on kids saying skibbity toilet. We're seeing crackdowns on slang. Recently, they launched the Clear and Bright campaign, which is targeting irregular and uncivilized language. By the way, we found the actual press release from Chinese state media and had Stefik translate it. It's called the Clear and Bright campaign, and it's about stopping annoying online slang from young people. It literally is considered like the Chinese equivalent of skibbity toilet. Some of these are so weird they're untranslatable, is because elderly people in China feel annoyed and out of touch with it. For example, here's slang. YYDS is slang for goat in China. And if you know what that means, congratulations, you're probably a young, high-frequency internet user. If it leaves you feeling confused, then admit it, you're probably over the hill and out of touch. But more importantly are the crackdowns on things like slang like leaks. People say when I feel like a leak, it's like they're being harvested by the government or big business for a greater purpose. Similarly, the idea of lying flat. The lying flat slang is like, I am so fed up with working this hard to try and get an expensive house in a big city, I'm gonna lie flat. This one is, if you use banana peel, it's, I don't know how to pronounce this, but it sounds like Xi Jinping. And then shrimp moss means step down. So if you're mad about Xi Jinping, you do banana peel plus shrimp moss. And it's a way to get around the censors and say, basically, I want Xi Jinping to step down. That one is being cracked down on. And when, this is XSWL, which basically means it's like our equivalent of idgeball or laughing out loud. All of these are being cracked down upon. And the way they're being done is what they call harmonizing. When a censor finds an irregular phrase, they eliminate it and they call it harmonizing. However, in response, online community of young people have made a slang for harmony called river crabbing, because the word for river crab sounds like harmony. So if you get your slang deleted, it's called I got river crabbed. So I don't know what to think about this. It seems a little heavy-handed. It's gonna be an impossible game of whack-a-mole to try and crack down on this discontent. But until they have a viable alternative, people are gonna complain about the only party in power, and so they have to keep doing with the crackdowns. All I know is, as much as I have many, many, many problems in my country, I will take to arms if any president ever tries to crack down on the Rizzler. Amen, and thanks for watching this global edition of Marketing Monday.